Demographics are destiny, and I think by this point, no one can disagree that if you change the ethnic makeup of a country, you will then change that country's culture, principles, values, everything about it. Because, if Australia was 90% Indian, that country would look very different to its 90% Anglo-Saxon. But what will be news to people is the fact that a major political party in the West has finally accepted this and is incorporating this into their political strategies. What I'm referring to is the Liberal Party of Australia just had its election review leaked and then tabled in Parliament for the public to see and download. And the document talks about the leader of the party being unattractive to women, talks about disconnect on nuclear policy and work from home policies, but it gets this really interesting part about migration. And honestly, I think this section has more weighing for the future of that party and Australian right-wing politics than anything else about the leader's attractiveness or nuclear. Because in this section, they said that their immigration rhetoric, which by all accounts was actually very weak for even a centre-right party, alienated migrant communities, that is a reason why they lost. As in, basically, if you talk about immigration, you will lose immigrant communities. Now, you would think then that the Conservative Party's answer to this would be, okay, we need to go harder on immigration to save Australia's sovereignty and democracy. No. In this document, their politicians say things like, modern migrants no longer come to Australia because they are forever leaving behind their old countries and will never go back. They see themselves as part of both places, and we need to understand that. The document also says things like, diaspora campaigning is critical in Australia. We will never be back in government until we understand it and the diasporas respect us. But actually, even left-wing institutional political analysts like Redbridge said the same things months before this document came out. Redbridge said it was the rhetoric the Liberal Party had on immigration that caused communities like Indians to turn away from them. And this all reminds me actually of a source sort of close to the Liberal Party. They were saying to me how Indians love education, love low taxes, love all these sort of conservative values. They are, in other words, the perfect liberal conservative voter. But they break away on one little issue, one key issue. You can probably guess what that is. Immigration. And they were saying this to me as in like, oh, Osborne, you should pander, you should get the Indians on board because they're really based. And I'm just like, well, hang on a second. These are such conservative, such based voters that all those base conservative values go out the window if you question their ability to import more of themselves. That doesn't actually sound like a conservative. They're coming over here with their base conservative values, but if you say a conservative value like, hey, we should probably reduce the level of immigration, that's it. They're done. They're out. And so this document, the way it's written and what actually happened to the Liberal Party shows us they're looking to win back those Indians. Because you saw in the wake of the election, they appointed Scarr, Hamilton, Lay. They basically tried to frame themselves as like a pro-migrant, pro-multiculturalism party. Not to say they're the complete inverse of that beforehand, but they're obviously making a renewed effort to try and paint over that history, that stigma. But that hasn't worked actually, because since those people were appointed and since the party did that sort of 180, a little something happened in the polls where that party's all but done and a further right, ostensibly far right party overtook them. And I think the phenomena we're going to start to see in Australia, like we've seen in the UK, not just the way that the Reform Party replaced the Tories as One Nation's replaced our Tories, the Liberal Party. What we're going to see is the polarisation of politics on ethnic grounds. And what I mean is that if the Indian community are single issue voters when it comes to immigration, where they'll discard all their otherwise conservative views in pursuit of further mass immigration. The only counterbalance to that in a democracy is, for example, white voters doing the same, as in white voters discarding whatever abstract principles they may vote on, to then instead have immigration also be their single issue. You can look at a recent election in the UK where neither their Labour Party, neither their Tories really got up. Instead, the far left and the far right did. The Greens and the Reform Party. And you overlay that with a demographic view of the area and the sort of multicultural community, the diverse community voted for the far left and the otherwise white areas voted for Reform. And so in Australia, I guess the centre-right tried to play the gamble that, okay, we'll pander to the diverse conservative community with positive immigration rhetoric and then hopefully keep the white voters because they'll stick with us for nuclear. No, what's happened is it seems like all the white voters were like, okay, stuff that, let's go One Nation. And I guess the migrant voters, they might have what's left of the Liberal Party or just go Labour. And so fundamentally what this is then is multiculturalism erasing democracy, sort of replacing it with an ethnic headcount where this group can win this area because they're the majority and that group wins the other area because they're the majority. No longer is it like this nation cohesively voting for the best future of it. It's the nations within the nation voting independently for what's best for them. And you can take that really to some of its natural conclusions. You can say, therefore, it is in the interest of the left to install a permanent majority by pursuing mass immigration. In America, people like Brandon Gill, they say that is the strategy of the Democrats.
Democrats have been talking about this for decades now. You hear them all the time. Demographic changes benefit Democrats, at the expense of Republicans. I mean, the sort of the political Bible that Democrats have followed is a book called The Emerging Democratic Majority. It was written in the early 2000s. And the thesis of the book is that demographic changes will create, as the title implies, a new Democratic majority for several decades. I mean, this is in their words. I mean, they're the ones who talk about all of this, but I think we need to hear them. And whenever they say something, actually believe it and recognize what the plan is.
And when you look back at Australia, someone who made a similar comment was Jacinta Price. She said how 70% of Indians vote Labor. And sort of therefore it's probably in the interest of Labor to import more Indians.
I think Labor like to be able to ensure that they're going to allow those in that would ultimately support their policies, their views, and vote for them as well. So, yeah, I mean...
Do you think they're actively running a migration program to bring people in that you think will be politically open to their ideas?
Absolutely. I mean, this is Labor. Basically, it's power at any cost, and we see that occur all over the place in terms of the way they conduct themselves. We see the way in which they like to influence the Indigenous community and remote communities, the influence of the unions. It's ultimately about power.
So, who do you think they're trying to bring in to make them vote for Labor?
Well, those that are more Labor-leaning, that are likely to be...
But there are right-wing and left-wing people in every community, right? So who specifically are they?
Well, as we've seen, you yourself mentioned that there is a concern with the Indian community, and only because there's been large numbers, and we can see that reflected in the way that the community votes for Labor at the same time. So if they're going to see a reflection that, okay, these individuals are going to vote for us more so than other parts of the community, well, then of course they're going to express a view that we'll get those sorts of individuals into our community.
And I guess in sort of abstract way, she is correct. Like, in a natural flux, it would be beneficial to Labor, and by natural tendency of them being a party which appeals to Indians and importing more Indians, they're installing themselves as a majority. But maybe it's a bit too far to think that, in some deep Fabian society way, the Labor Party is purposefully doing that. I don't know. But you can definitely see a pattern whereby in multicultural areas like in the UK, like in the US, like in Australia, they do tend to vote left. And maybe that's because of that natural conservative broken by immigration rhetoric. Maybe that's the case. But fundamentally, now the question has to be asked, what do we want for the direction of our country? I saw Mr. Pavley made a post quoting Lee Kuan, where he says in multiracial societies, you don't vote in accordance with your economic interests and social interests. You vote in accordance with race and religion. I think that's true. And that is what this death of democracy I'm talking about is, where multiculturalism just destroys the democracy in that true sense that we know, where it's like, what is best for the cohesive collective nation, not the nations or the races and religions within said nation. And so what is the takeaway from this all then? Well, you're going to see a polarization of politics along racial lines, because our March for Australia, like the biggest national anti-immigration or even nationalist rally in contemporary, possibly all of Australian history, it was all white people. It was all white people. The core base of MAGA, white people. Reform, white people. One Nation, white people. It's maybe kind of unfortunate this is the way it's going, because, the sort of liberal systems and traditions we built up in the West, we don't want to go down these ethnic lines. But that is what's going to happen, because no, actually, you can't just import millions of people from the rest of the world and have them assimilate and forget about where they're from or what they are or, what team they're on. They're going to compete on those lines. And white people, it takes a while, but they start to do the same as well. And I don't think they do it in such an explicit way either. I don't think there's white people voting for One Nation because I'm white and that's the white party. But I think they just see that's the only party that's going to listen to their concerns on immigration. And I think across the West, it can be said these are all very carnal sort of intuitions that white, native people of England or the US or Australia are having, sort of drawn towards this kind of politics in a prior way. I don't think any of them would say they're voting, Republican or Reform or One Nation because it's a racial thing. But that's certainly an element. And again, not even if the mens rea is formed in their head, they're doing so unbeknownst possibly to even then. But these are the ethnic lines that are being formed. And so this Liberal Party document that got leaked, it's very stark, the picture it paints for democracy. This is the party that, for all intents and purposes, is finished. And in its death throes, all it can muster is we should have appealed to migrants more. It's quite an interesting direction that Australia is going in. I mean, we've seen it happen again. I keep repeating in the UK, in the US, but it's a weird feeling to watch it unfold in our own backyard, where for so long, our own leaders said, oh, we're not like the US or the UK with their populist surges. It's going to come here. because the same patterns of immigration played out there as they are here. I'm blown away the Libs said this, but I am therefore not surprised they didn't want to publish this document and it said it had to be leaked. So if you guys want to support the work, you can do so at the link below for the Patreon. Otherwise, like, subscribe, share this video. Let me know what I can do to improve. This is my 5th long form video. Thank you for watching, and yeah, see you next time.